Welcome, everyone, to Old Roommates. Today on the show, we revisit The Color Purple, starring Whoopi Goldberg. So get out your razor and have yourself a nice, close shave. It's time to begin.
Hey everyone, welcome to Old Roommates, the only podcast that revisits pop culture through a middle-aged lens. This is Brian.
And this is Christina.
And today we are revisiting The Color Purple, directed by Steven Spielberg, of course, and introducing Whoopi Goldberg, her first film appearance. Christina would be
Oprah too, right? Isn't it Oprah's first screen appearance?
Yes, it is.
Well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being a big deal.
Yeah. Christina, we begin, as we always do, by going back in time to the very first time. We watched The Color Purple. Christina, tell us about your first time.
Oh my gosh! So it's so funny. I'm really looking forward to this revisit because I feel like this movie is so different. My first experience and only experience, I've only watched this movie once. I watched it at home with my mom and my sisters. It was 85, so, well, it was in the movies in 85.
Yeah, so probably 86.
So it's probably more like 86 or 87, yeah, something like that. So I was, 18, 19, or maybe 18.
Okay.
But I remember this being a big deal in my household where my mother, it was an event. Like, my mother wanted us to watch this movie. And I feel like she did the same thing with Roots.
Oh,
I think it was like her way of trying to get us some sort of culture and understanding or whatever. But I remember, like, she really wanted us to watch this movie.
That's really nice.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was on HBO. It must have been HBO because I remember some of the more heavy subject matter watching that. And I'm wondering if they would have shown... I mean, I don't know. Maybe they would have shown. But anyway, I'm going to say it was HBO. I don't really know. But I remember her making a big deal out of us watching it. And my memory of this, it's so interesting, this revisit. It really seemed like a very different movie to me this time around. Because back then, while I was watching it, I felt like it was a very violent, depressing movie. And disturbing. Like, I felt like the whole movie was just disturbing and depressing and violent. So even when you suggested it a few weeks ago, I was almost thinking, I don't know if I can do, I'll do it for the listeners, of course, because that's what I do. That's what I do for you guys.
Such a giver.
But yeah, I was a little bit nervous to watch it because I remember, like, all the violence. I'm like, it's heavy. It's over 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
It's a long movie, and I was really nervous that I wouldn't be able to, like, do it. But so that's my then.
Yeah.
And we can talk about my now in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
But I remember watching it with my mother and having it be a very important thing for me to watch for her.
Yeah. It's nice that your mom wanted you to have, like, sort of to witness, say, the cinematic version of the Black experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because we talked about this before, not during our podcast episodes, but off. We were like, we don't, like, it's like Black History Month and these, and so many, anytime there's been a headline that immediately speaks to the Black experience or understanding, like when people say, I don't see color and why that is wrong and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about, what movies would we revisit to kind of get into that those sort of conversations. But when you really look at the 80s, there aren't that many movies with a Black, let alone a Black lead, a Black character.
Right.
And so, it's not funny, but it's good that we're revisiting this. But I think it's great that your mom, like, forced you to watch it. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, and I mean, that generation was so racist anyway. I mean, I don't think my mother was racist in like a conscious way.
Yeah.
But I think just the way that they were raised back then,
Yeah.
and really just so ignorant to
Yeah.
everything. And I think that was sort of her way of understanding, trying to understand Black people and their history and things like that. Like, I think it was her way of trying to understand it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we grew up in a pretty white neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a couple of Black friends, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was, primarily white. We
Yeah.
didn't know a lot. Very, ignorant in that way.
Well,
and I
you
think that was just
fear-
her way of saying, oh, here's an opportunity for her to learn things as well.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how right or wrong that was, but I think it was
Well,
good
it's-
intentions.
You fear what you don't understand, and I think in a generation like your mom's and my parents and grandparents, it's like they, I mean, I remember, I'll just tell this story. My grandmother is long dead, but I remember being at my grandmother's when I was a little kid, and I know I've told you these stories before, where we would just be sitting there. And my grandfather would go out to go grocery shopping. Like, he ran the house. Like, she was the matriarch, but he kind of did everything. And my grandmother, and he would drive away. And, my grandmother had some money. I mean, they had an in-ground swimming pool. I mean, she was probably the
Ooh la
richest
la.
person I knew in my real life. And so my grandfather would drive out of the driveway, and the phone would ring. And she'd be like, hello. And it would be like a dial tone. And she's like, you know who that was, don't you? I'm like, no, who? She's like, my new neighbors across the street. They're Black. They check. Oh my God. They check anytime a car leaves drive, they check to see if I'm home, so they're gonna, come and rob me. I'm like, Graham, I feel like that's not true. And I remember truly being a little kid and laughing. She's like, don't laugh at your grandmother. I know. But I think that's it. This is why
sad.
And this is why it is sad. And this is why representation matters. This is why, it's all of this fear and racism. It's just we need representation, and because otherwise you have these thoughts in your head, and there's no other vision, there's no other view, there's no other thing to consider.
Right.
And
you figure her mom and dad probably taught her all these backwards notions.
Yeah.
And so that's where that comes from. And you're right. If she knows nothing else.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and she lived in this house of decades and decades, and this is the first Black family to move into the neighborhood. And, but, and I shouldn't, and I hope this isn't offensive, I don't mean to laugh, but I am laughing because it's my story about my grandmother.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It's the ridiculousness of it.
About,
yeah. And that it's her next family would just rob her and go about their day.
Right. Because that's what they do. They just look around for the white people to leave their house.
Oh my God.
So
but
anyway,
The Color Purple for me. But that's, so I was not sat down by my mom or my dad to watch this movie. I've talked about this before. I had a pretty rough childhood. My parents divorced when I was young, and we were pretty poor, and but I really liked dramatic movies, and I would watch anything that was up for a bunch of Oscars. I would try really hard to watch it, and if I missed it at the movie theater, which was the case with this, I would rent it on VHS as soon as it came out. I would go to my dad on the weekends, so I would rent a bunch of VHS tapes.
Ooh la la, again.
VHS.
Only family in America with a DVD player.
VHS tapes, and I remember getting The Color Purple because he didn't care. I mean, my dad was a drunk.
Right.
He didn't
You've
care
talked
what we
about this
rented.
before. You can do whatever you want.
Whatever I wanted. I could watch whatever I wanted. And so I wanted to watch The Color Purple. This movie was so long, but I'll tell you, Christina, is similar to you. If you were to say, what kind of movie is The Color Purple? I'd be like, oh God, it's so depressing. It's so violent. It's so sad. It's so tragic. And not to get into the now, but into the then, I do remember my sister Terry watching it with me, and there were times where I think we were so nervous that we would do impersonations of the characters. Anytime Whoopi Goldberg, she has that line with the mail, she's like, anything from me? And we would just be like, anything from me? And then anytime our dad or our mom came in from the mailbox, we'd be like, anything from me? And we would just bust out laughing. But I think you as a kid, I think you do things like that to get the edge off.
Yes.
Because at this point, what am I? I mean, this is 85, so, so it was, it came, say, 86, 87 on VHS, so 13, 14, I guess.
So that would be, that would
so
make
pretty
sense.
young. My sister's probably 12. And so it's like you do these things to make it not real.
Yes.
And anytime Oprah spoke, we'd be like, we would do little Oprah speeches, in the field. And but you do that to sort of numb yourself from the reality of how tragic these situations are with this violence, this really hyper-violent situations. But all that to say, I am like you in the sense of my memory of this movie is very sad and dark and violent.
Yes.
So that was a lot of talking, but now let's get into the now.
The now. So I watched this a couple of days ago, and it began the way I remembered it, with the the friendship of the sisters, the sisterhood, I guess, and a lot. I mean, it's very fuzzy, of course. I've only watched it once, and this was many, many years ago. But the beginning part is how I remember this movie. All of this super tragic event, all these super tragic events that happened to this woman, with the beating and the raping and the stolen, the babies being sold, the incest. She's getting, basically raped by her father. And I mean, all of that I remembered. And then moving into, being sold. I'm assuming there was money involved when he said Celie could, I don't think it says that, but there's probably some sort of dowry or something, right? Yeah. I don't know how that works. But that whole thing is where I kind of remembered it. What surprised me was when it started taking more of a comedic turn. I
have the same damn
It was
note.
So bizarre. So at one point, I think it's basically when he starts getting ready for Suge to show up, right? Right now he's this mean, violent rapist who is basically just no redeeming qualities.
Can I please jump in?
Yes, of course.
We have a lot of the same notes on this because but I have a quote, because the movie, I blame this movie for having this switch of gears, because it's so jolting now. Yes. Because it, in a way, the movie is the abuser, because it's like, we're going to damage this audience with these horrific images of rape, of physical violence, and then we're gonna jump in time a little bit, and suddenly everything's funny and fun.
He's
everything's fun. Isn't he funny? He's so bumbling. He's so nervous, and he actually,
it was so weird.
In Mr., so played by Danny Glover. And by the way, Danny Glover is great. It's
amazing.
Not
he never got
him
nominated for anything.
No, he didn't.
I was shocked.
And it's not his fault. The movie really lets him down. But I'll tell you this. So, Mr., at one point, he looks at the camera. Yeah. And it's that very movie-ish thing, because Nettie has kicked him. He tries to rape Nettie. Yes. Nettie kicks him in the balls. And you see him groveling on the road. And he eventually either looks, I don't know, he doesn't stand up, but he says, "I'll get you." And then the camera gets a really good close-up of his face, and he looks right at the camera and goes, "I'll get you." And I'm like, that's a villain. That's a monster. That's a movie monster.
Absolutely.
And Christina, will go right back to you, because you're exactly right with what you're saying. I felt exactly the same. We felt exactly the same way. It's like, we're supposed to laugh at him now? He's a bumbling...
It was very weird. It was such a strange shift, because he was such a monster, trying to rape this girl. And I was so happy that it was Celie's sister, Nettie or Nellie?
Nettie.
I have Nellie. Anyway. So he was creepy. He was stalking her. He wanted her in the beginning. He wanted her, and he got Celie.
Right.
For some reason, this girl did not get abused. it was bizarre.
Well, who, Nettie?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Nettie does say, Pa wouldn't keep his hands off me. She said it a couple times. She had to keep fighting him off. They don't show it. But what do you mean, like, that Mister didn't physically beat Nettie?
It seemed like she skirted around, like, everybody used Celie as, like, this nothing. This rape, abusing,
and how many
hitting,
times do they say,
blah, blah, blah.
You're so ugly. She's so ugly. Celie is ugly and spoiled twice. Meaning
spoiled twice.
Because she had two babies.
Yes. If for some reason, like Nettie, she was younger and she was pretty, and somehow she kind of escaped the bulk of the abuse. Yeah, and she does say she's been fighting him off, but it doesn't really indicate whether he is succeeding in the rape.
Yeah.
And she ends up leaving that house to come live with Celie or whatever. But the creepy part is, like, she's walking and you see Mr. on his horse, following her, stalking her, and you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And following, and she knows that he's after her, and it's like, oh my God, he drags her into the bushes, and I was so happy that she fought him off and like basically like kicked him in the balls, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That was good to see. I was glad to see that she fought him off, and he didn't actually succeed in that. But then he goes to, kick her out of the house, and somehow she survives having nothing.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph, that scene.
Creepy.
Well, because there's the part where he suddenly isn't on the horse anymore.
Yes.
That's a fucking horror. That's a horror movie.
That is a horror movie.
That's a horror movie. Absolutely.
It's like, what the hell? Where the hell is he? It's like, shit.
That is done so well,
yes.
but it's so scary. But I do think, through my middle-aged lens, I think this movie is less successful when it feels like a movie. Like, when the horse is going through with Danny Glover with Mr. on it, and then suddenly he's not on the horse anymore. That, to me, is like, this is a movie. This is a gimmick. This is a trick of the movie to make it feel like a horror movie. We already know he's a monster, and I think it loses a bit of its, like, rawness with that. And I think, like, there are a couple other things, and we'll get to it as we're going, where when it feels too much like a movie. There's scenes of Celie, like being a bit brazen, where I'm like, wait, she's only safe because the screenplay is saying don't beat Celie right now. We're going to jump around.
We are jumping up. Shallow Dive's only here, of course, but I know exactly what you mean.
Because I'm like, wait.
Many times in my notes where I'm like, isn't she scared?
Right.
It's almost like they humanize him too much.
Yes.
It's like, he's a villain, he's a monster. Why isn't he a villain and a monster throughout the whole thing? And so it brings me back to this whole, like, getting ready for Shug. And he's being frazzled. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's goofy. Now he's like this goofy husband that doesn't know, like, he's forgetting things. And there's Celie holding up his shoes because he almost walked out without his shoes on. And he comes back and all of a sudden he's feeling embarrassed.
Yeah.
And he, like, puts his head down like, no, I don't want to like him.
No.
I don't know why they want me to like this guy now.
Yeah.
And it made me really kind of upset. I wrote down, I'm like, are we supposed to laugh?
Oh, Christina, it's the same for me.
Are we supposed to laugh at this? Is this what they want the audience to? Now we're going to forget that he was an ass and rapes her all the time? And now, I don't understand why we're supposed to laugh at this goofiness. Oh, how he's so silly.
This is...
Oh!
Here's mine. Are we suddenly... This is exactly what... it's right here. Are we suddenly supposed to find him funny? Mr. Grease in his hair, forgetting everything, slipping and falling. Suddenly
what a goofball.
Yeah. Suddenly he's less of a monster and more of a buffoon. And even Celie is like... And I know, like... There's Stockholm Syndrome. I know that you get used to this treatment. Yes. I know you try and find the joy in every little kerfuffle.
Right.
But, like, she makes faces that are, like, I think are designed, this is what I mean by it's a movie, to get the audience to laugh.
Yes, because you're like, okay, it doesn't bother her that much. I suppose it's funny.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
the same thing with this when she spits in the water. And it's like, this feels shticky. This feels like, and it's funny with the South in movies, because now here we have The Color Purple with spit. We had Prince of Tides with dog food.
Mm-hmm.
We had fried green tomatoes with possible human meat,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's funny because in the South,
like an 80s southern theme, right?
well, not, and actually Prince of Tides and Fried Green Tomatoes were both 91, I think. But the thing is, to that point, it's funny that the South, like, their revenge is food based, because food is really important in the South, and through this podcast I am realizing this all the more. But I completely have the same note, Christina, that it's like, this is a big problem with the movie, is the handling of Mr. And I'm telling you this, like, I felt like that the movie was sort of abusing us with this.
Yes.
Because
I totally understand what you're saying.
Later on, he beats her down to the ground with the letter. And it's not even that she had the letters.
No.
It's that she didn't hear him calling for her.
Right.
And it's like, okay, wait, now he's the villain again?
So now he's the villain again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so has he been beating her all along?
Yes.
And she's just okay with it? Or is he a better man now? And she's teaching him how to be a better man? Like, what is it? What is it? It drove me kind of bonkers.
Very upsetting.
And I never liked him. Like, Spielberg never convinced me
that he was the likable.
To like this guy. No. Even though he was being goofy.
Do you think that's a middle-aged lens thing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. But you know what? Okay. I never remembered him being goofy. So when I'm thinking back from
you
when
only
I
remember him
before,
as a villain.
I only remember him as a villain. I don't remember anything redeeming about him.
Even the end. The end. He is truly responsible for their reunion.
Yeah.
And yet it wasn't enough.
No.
Like, nice try.
Nice
try, mister.
Exactly. Yeah, it was very, very strange.
Yeah, and I didn't even really get his redemption. If anything, like she humiliated him in front of his father.
Yeah.
He unraveled, and he was like on the floor, and the animals weren't being fed, and it was disgusting.
Yeah,
like,
I actually said, obviously we're skipping to the end, but I even said, I'm like, I don't care to see him, to see his end.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not interested in seeing how he ends up. I have no emotion towards him at all. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
At all.
So now my next note is in praise. I actually wrote praise Jesus.
Oh, God.
Sophia enters the picture, played by Oprah Winfrey.
She was so
amazing.
Good. So
and
good.
You mentioned earlier that if it was like sort of, you said it was a big deal.
It
right?
was, yeah.
And I remember thinking, because, being whatever young, I remember people talking about it like it was sort of stunt casting, like to see, hey, can she really act? Like they did with Madonna too. Can Madonna act? And I think it back then it sort of took me out because I was like, oh, this is Oprah Winfrey acting for the first time or whatever. But I think now that so much time has passed, and through my older lens, she's really good in this.
She's fantastic. The only thing I didn't like is the marching. The way she marched.
Oh, yeah.
That bothered me a tiny bit.
That's a little movie-ish, little comic relief.
Yeah, it was like, what?
It's like,
People don't walk that way. But she was fantastic. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was so impressed with her. I was a little bit nervous because, again, like, I felt like, I don't remember it from back then feeling like it was stunt casting. Yeah. But thinking about watching it now, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if she is really as good as everyone was saying.
Was Oscar nominated.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and with her, so that felt more natural to have more of a comic relief with her. Mm-hmm. Like they should just left it with her. Yeah. Because I could relax a little bit. The movie needed a little bit of comic relief for sure because of just such the heavy topics. Yeah. But I wrote down, I'm like, I forgot about the comic aspects of any of this of the movie, but she was really good. The wedding, like just her with what's his name? Harpo.
Harpo. Which is Oprah backwards.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, Harpo Productions, right?
Right.
Those moments were fun for me, and I could relax a little bit, mostly because he was not on screen.
So similar, my feeling was like I was glad anytime she was on screen because it meant that Celie wasn't going to get beaten.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Was you have like a little bit of a relax? Yeah, you could
a
relax
relief,
a little bit. But it was, I don't know. Some of these things in the movie were a little bit shticky though, with the falling through the roof. And,
well, falling through and not being hurt.
And, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, what, did he fall in hay?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Right.
I don't understand, like, why he's not hurt. But it was clearly meant to be funny. Like,
in the music.
In the music.
Was, like, out of a Disney movie.
Yeah. I wrote that several times in here, too. It's a very interesting music choices.
And it's Quincy Jones.
Which I heard when Shug was singing, and that I could hear Quincy Jones, but like the Disney
it's
sort
weird.
of hip, sing-song kind of background was a little bit interesting.
I did laugh, although I'm such a sucker, but like the little kid, when Harpo falls through the roof, and he looks like he got really hurt, but he's completely fine. And the little kid walks in and he goes, "It's gonna rain on your head."
Oh, yeah, I did laugh at that.
I just laughed out loud.
That was funny.
I mean, but again, like, it's like, that's a movie kid movie moment. Which I think, and I'm only criticizing that because when this movie is dark and heavy, it's really well done. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe, Steven Spielberg second-guessed himself a few times and was like, I need to lighten this up a little bit. And I'm glad he did.
Yes.
But it felt a little too over. It felt a little too opposite end of the spectrum with the comedy. Yeah,
he could have handled it a little bit better. Yeah. Especially with the Mr. stuff.
Also with the music, there's a conversation Mr. says to Harpo, "Sophia thinks too much of herself. You need to take her down a peg or two." Mm-hmm. And then someone else says, "A good sound beating." Now, and I wrote that dialogue down because during that music I wrote, the music is downright goofy. Why? They're talking about beating a woman.
It's strange.
And the music is like, it's like, what?
Yeah, I don't know.
God.
It's
very odd.
Very odd. Very
if you have not seen this movie, because this is like, it was nominated for, I think, 11 Oscars. It didn't win any, but, I mean, this is like critics raved, audiences went crazy for it. This movie was made for $15 million. It made $142 million. It is a beloved film, beloved book, but if you haven't seen it in a while, revisit it, because it kind of let me down a little bit.
Lots of interesting choices.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting choices. I liked her speech to Celie, because Celie says, Harpo comes to Celie, "What am I supposed to do about Sophia?" Because Sophia. What am I supposed to do about Sophia? Because she's a big personality and she's bossing him around. And Celie, knowing not much else, she says, beat her.
Beat her. I rewound it. Because I was like, what? What did she say?
So yeah, I was like...
Like, beat her?
First of all, I don't think Harpo could beat her.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like she was she was bigger than him, for one thing.
Yeah.
But even besides that, she had
she's
anger
strong.
in her. She's
strong. Yeah.
Great
character.
She's scrappy.
Yeah.
I think she could have easily hit him. But apparently they would beat each other, apparently. Like, I didn't catch this the first time around, but they would beat each other. And then finally she got sick of it. But Sophia's speech to Celie was really good.
Oh, yeah.
And, she's just like, I've been struggling, and I'm beat by my
father,
and blah, blah, blah. And then Celie said something about getting into heaven, I think. Said something about that, because then her response was, bash Mister's head open and then think of heaven later. And then walked away.
Nice.
So that was interesting,
just all good stuff with Oprah.
Yeah, she was great.
Then we meet, and if I'm going too fast,
no, it's okay. I think we're about the same spot.
Yeah. Then we meet Shug Avery.
Yeah.
And I think she is my favorite character, and I think my favorite performance in this movie. I loved her. And similar to Sophia, I was glad every time she was on screen because, again, a strong female character.
Yes, very strong.
But very different than Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's using her talent and, say, beauty to sort of dodge the usual treatment by men. She's sort of taking her sexuality and sexiness and spinning it around as strength.
Yes.
Whereas Sophia uses her physicalness for her strength. So but when Shug, and I remember this like it was yesterday, and I've only seen this movie once other than the revisit.
Yeah.
I remember like it was yesterday when Shug looks at Celie. And by the way, Whoopi Goldberg is beautiful in this.
She's not bad.
I thought she was actually quite pretty in this. And Shug goes, "You sure is ugly." And then she like busts out laughing. I just love this character.
Yeah, she's a really good character. I liked how she kind of grows on you because she's like I wrote down Shug is quite the bitch.
Oh, she's a handful. And
she's a handful.
And you also don't know how deep her drinking problem lies. Like you don't know how deep that gets. You're like, "Oh God." But
yeah, and you don't there's so much there's so much you don't know about Shug when she first shows up. You see her as being like this entertainer, strong character. Obviously, Mr. is obsessed with her, turns him into a bumbling little fool.
Yeah.
But she doesn't come across as a very nice person when she first she first shows up. She's calling her ugly. She's like throwing food against the wall. She's calling people names, like get the hell out of here. Yeah. And you're not sure like what's going on. Somebody said she was sick.
They said she has that awful woman's disease.
I don't know what that
I didn't know what that meant either. I was like, does that lesbianism?
Period?
Well, right. But then there's that whole other scene with her and Celie.
That was bizarre too. I don't remember that one either.
I remember it.
I don't remember it being so lesbianish. I remembered it being kind.
Yeah.
But I don't remember it being like full on kissing on the mouth.
Spielberg has said his biggest regret with The Color Purple is that he downplayed. In the book, I guess the relationship is much more obtuse.
Okay.
And Spielberg chose to downplay it in the movie. But I still think that scene's really powerful. Especially as like a little kid who was, me that was questioning myself and unsure of so many things. And like to see like women, like you're saying, caring about each other, but through my middle-aged lens, I was like, "Oh shit, this is a little more like erotic and sexual than I remembered when I was a kid." And I was actually proud of the movie because like this is PG-13. This is 1985. Did we say
85?
85. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I'm like PG-13, and like you see her hands caressing. They kiss how many times?
Yeah,
quite a few times. And I was proud that the movie took those chances in 85 for a major Steven Spielberg production.
Yes.
And
they leave the scene in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So you don't know what happens, if anything.
And as a kid, I remember just sort of ending with the kissing. Mm-hmm. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh, they totally had sex.
Yeah, something else happened.
But yeah, I love Shug, and you're exactly right. Like there was a lot of mystery with her, and I was like, oh god, I don't remember Shug being such a mess.
Right,
but she does.
She
Eventually
pulls it together. Yeah, she absolutely
does.
pulls it together. I think she was just really drunk when it's like that's I think what it was more than her being a complete mess. Because even like the next day, it's like she's pulled herself together and she's having these intelligent conversations and things, and even the performances. So yeah, she's a very interesting character.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have known more about her, honestly, but maybe part of the interesting part of her is that you don't know a lot about her. Mm-hmm. So it was great, and I liked seeing. So it seemed like almost every woman in that movie, aside from Celie, was a pretty powerful woman. Even her sister. She's very strong.
Yeah.
Not powerful so much, but strong.
Yeah.
Sophia, strong.
Mm-hmm.
Shug, strong. She had all of these strong influences around her.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me feel a little bit like, why didn't she take more influence from the people around her? And I get that she did at the end, but I almost felt like it was a little bit rushed. Like, I wished Celie's development had been a little bit more gradual, like trying this and trying that and doing this. And you see a little bit of it because she's running a household. But as far as the confidence, like, I wished you could see more of that confidence gradually growing in her rather than have her be as meek as a mouse and then all of a sudden she stands up for herself out of the blue. It was just a little, I don't know, I thought it was a strange choice. Didn't seem natural.
Yeah, I had the same note about the big dinner table scene, because it's like, and also because of Mr.'s reaction. I was like, this is,
And all of a sudden he's meek. Like, what?
Yeah, it's like, I just feel like this wouldn't happen, especially in front of Mr.'s father, who is who is constantly judging him. And it just seemed like the character choices weren't seen all the way through in that scene.
Yes, it was it's almost felt like there were several scenes missing or something.
Or
like, why is he feeling less manly? Why is she feeling more powerful?
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
So Pa, who we talked about, Mr.'s dad, when he does, I wrote, he's super rude when he talks about Shug. So he's not thrilled with Celie, but he's also not thrilled with Shug.
Yes.
And like, why Mr. is so infatuated with Shug. He said she is black as tar with legs like baseball bats. Like, he's so evil, and it's like, I don't know what he does want from Mr. It's almost, but it's really just like whatever. It doesn't matter what Mr. does. It's not. It's
well,
just
he
not,
didn't
not
like
good
the
enough.
first wife either. Remember,
No.
he said something about the first wife too.
Yep, and but yeah, and then so then Celie spits in the water, and he drinks the whole thing. And yeah, so and throughout this, we're jumping through time. It's like 1922, the Shug Avery show. Sophia's back. I love that scene with like the big, like the piano player. He's like, "Time to go!" Like, because like all the fighting is breaking loose in the bar. Yeah.
Yes. The one part I didn't like is when she hit her and she went sliding across the floor into the. It's like, are we all of a sudden? It's like, what were those westerns, like those
spaghetti
westerns? Yeah. When you have the bar fight and they go flying across the room.
Yeah, it would almost show me like, it was like
those hatch.
Like Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Like when characters are still
I just
flying.
didn't like that part, but the rest of it was really good. Like, everyone knows that she has this crazy temper. Everybody knows to get out of her way because something bad is going to happen. And I thought that was pretty funny. I actually, before that happened, I loved that song. Did that song Sister?
That was nominated for an Oscar.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that song. Honestly, I forgot about that whole thing. But that was a great song. I could have listened to that over and over again.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Radon Chong is the woman that she punches.
Yes.
I thought it was also funny, even like little things like the dog that walks slowly. Did you catch that?
I don't even catch that.
Because like all the fighting, it was crazy, and even like the dog was like I think the dog was like slowly walking out of the scene because the dog was afraid. It was really, really good. And that might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's just, and it is so shticky and played for laughs, but it didn't bother me.
I liked the scene too.
Yeah.
Again, like Celie, sometimes she feels not real.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm like, why is he even bringing her to this? Like, since when is he bringing her to stuff?
Right.
That didn't seem right to me. But she's there, and she's almost like...
Oh, yeah, she's covering her face, covering her mouth. She has a hat on.
She doesn't know... I mean, she's been with people before.
She's been with Shug.
Right? It's like, I don't want to say all of a sudden she just doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Is she afraid of Mr. still? Like,
Yeah.
it's just very unsure. And then the fight breaks out, and she's just standing there watching it.
Yeah.
That didn't seem like something she would do. She
she
knows
would run.
violence.
She would run.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed a little bit strange. Not Whoopi. I loved her performance, but her character just sort of bothered me throughout. It felt inconsistent. I think that's really the word I've been looking for. I felt her character was inconsistent in how she just dealt with life in general. Maybe I'm way off, but
No, I know exactly what you mean. There were times, and I think it all leads up to that dinner table scene, which is why we struggle with that. It's like, wow, this kind of came out of nowhere, really out of nowhere. So then we get to the scene where Sophia punches the mayor.
This is a terrible scene.
Gut wrenching.
This made me this is a scene I've remembered my whole entire life.
Yeah.
Just tragic because she's such a strong, powerful woman. You love her. She's comic relief.
Yeah.
And they almost do the opposite. This is just dawning on me now. They almost do the opposite to her that they did with Mr.
Yeah.
Where he is first this terrible, terrible character and just a completely different personality. And then all of a sudden he's like this bumbling. And now we have Sophia, who's hilarious. You love to see her on screen because she's great and she's funny and powerful.
Yeah.
And then she gets beaten.
Yeah.
And her entire spirit is
broken,
shattered. Yeah. She gets thrown in jail.
Yeah.
She
has a permanent eye injury.
She has because of that gun, right?
Hit her in the face
oh
with the
my
gun.
God, this permanent eye injury. She has a slouch to her.
Yeah.
She has no confidence. She's been broken.
Yeah.
And it's so tragic and so sad to see.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. They actually say the N-word. Like one of the guys calls her a fat N-word.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh God, I don't remember this. And I remembered her being in that dinner table scene. I remember her being a little disfigured and a little, hunched and stuff. But I think I must have blocked out that mayor scene.
At all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see definitely wanting to do that.
Yeah. But I think and then the dinner table scene, Oprah was told by Steven Spielberg, what would you say to Celie? Just anyway. And that was all ad-libbed.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So what she said, to Celie about if you hadn't been there and all that kind of stuff.
That was beautiful.
It's funny because I always think Sophia helped Celie way more. Just showing her another way, to be and to treat and to how to respect yourself.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really honest. I don't have many more notes. I think I will say this to the film's credit. This movie is 2 hours and 40 something, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Did it feel like that?
It did not feel like that.
I was really oh God, here we go. And I said to Carl, I said, I think I might treat this like a Netflix thing where I'll watch it in 45-minute chunks. And I ended up watching the whole thing in one sitting. And I was I really, really was into it.
I was planning on doing, and for me it was more of a time issue because I had to get some stuff done or whatever. And I'm not like some people who can just sit around and watch movies all day.
Oh my God.
So, so my plan was to watch half of it.
Yeah.
And then watch the other half a couple days later. And excuse me. And I ended up watching 2 hours of it. And I didn't want to shut it off. I wanted to continue, but I couldn't. I had to get some stuff done. But yeah, it went by quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to me.
Yeah. And the only thing I will say is that I know the letters is supposed to be a big reveal, but I'm being dead honest. I think even when I was a kid, I'm well, of course he's hiding letters. Did it ever... I'm sure there are people that were really surprised by that, but I'm
I don't think anybody's surprised by
it. Oh, really?
Because he's always had to get the letters.
Oh, that's right.
Always had to get the letters. But so here's what bothered me about the letters. First of all, why is he keeping them all?
Why would he strip them up?
What's the point of keeping them all? There's no reason for him to keep. This bothers me in movies a lot. Like, oh, this thing that you shouldn't be having. Why are you holding on to it? In his, well, all right. So, to his credit, he does hide them in the floor.
Right. I
or
mean,
whatever.
But my point to that, Christina, is that's a lot of fucking effort. Every time a letter shows up.
Why? Yeah, like, why not?
Like, why not just throw
it
them
away?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really dumb to me. My other problem with the letters was she finds one. So the one that comes after years and years and years and years, right?
Yeah.
She finally gets to read one. The letter is basically saying a whole summary of, I've been sending you these letters, and now I don't know if you get them, and I have been with your children, and da-da-da. Like, she basically has a summary of her last 8 years. So my question is, does she start every letter that way?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense that she would start that. She should not have started that way. She should have just had a regular letter, and then as she's reading, because she obviously has all the letters.
The only thing I'll say is that because she has never been replied to. Mm-hmm. Like, I think maybe she does start her letters that way. Like, I guess you.
But she's been continuing to send them. So maybe she does. Yeah, you're right. Maybe she does start every single letter.
Or maybe she's like, maybe Celie didn't keep learning how to read.
Right. That's true.
So, I mean, that, maybe that there was that part of things.
It just seemed really convenient to all of a sudden get this one letter that has the summary of her last 8 years. And it didn't seem necessary to do that I know it was for the viewers, obviously, right? So we know what she's been up to. But it didn't seem necessary because she found all the other letters. So and even Shug said put them in order of the post date. They could have easily just summarized with the retelling of all these letters in order. Like, I don't know. It just bothered me so much. I expected more from Spielberg, okay?
Yep.
I liked how the audience had the experience of the letters with Nettie's living her experiences through the letters.
Yes.
As opposed to just hearing about it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. And I liked how it incorporated Celie's life. Yeah. Like, you see the bulldozer coming into the church, and you see the elephant walking through. Like, I liked how they did that. I thought that was pretty cool.
I forgot about that, to be honest. I forgot that's how they did that. Mm-hmm. Like, interesting little casting thing. Mm-hmm. Nettie's the leader, right? Because it wasn't her husband, because he was married and then the wife died, right? So it was like the minister or the missionary. What were they? Like.
So I was going to ask you about that, honestly, because somehow she ended up living with this couple and Celie's kids.
Yeah.
So
it's the So remember the woman that was in the store with Celie?
Yes.
That was her. So she was was actually ended up being her daughter, because she's like, oh, my husband's a minister. So that was the wife, and that was the minister. The guy that played the minister is Carl Anderson. Does that name sound familiar to you?
Not really.
Days of Our Lives, by chance.
Another Days of Our Lives reference.
Friends and Lovers, Christina. Gloria Loring and Carl Anderson. So in Days of Our Lives, Liz, played by Gloria Loring, was a singer at a bar, right? Shenanigans or something. And she had that hit, and she sang that song, Friends and Lovers, with her friend Carl Anderson. Oh my
gosh.
And that song broke through. It went way beyond Days of Our Lives, and it became a top 10 hit. Gloria Loring is the mother of Robin Thicke. I think everyone
I knew that.
Yeah. And so,
the wife of Alan.
Alan Thicke, right. Yeah. So Gloria Loring sang with Carl Anderson, who plays this man in The Color Purple, Friends and Lovers.
That is really interesting.
I used to love that song.
Oh, I did too. That was a good song.
And other quick casting thing.
Yes.
Original consideration for Shug was Shaka Khan, and she turned it down, as did Tina Turner.
Interesting.
And I don't know why they would turn it down. I don't know why. I couldn't find out anything. I think Chaka Khan just felt she wasn't an actress, and I understand that.
That makes
but
sense.
But Tina Turner, I think...
When was What's Love Got to Do with It? Was that is it like 87?
Well, Tina Turner didn't act in that, but like that was 92.
Oh, you're right. What was Tina Turner in? She was in Mad Max.
When
was Mad? That's what I was thinking of. When was
87?
That was 87.
I feel like though, I mean, I don't know. I would just really like to know why Tina Turner turned it down.
Should we write to her? Well, Tina, if you're listening to this podcast right now.
She does have a book, I, Tina. I wonder if it's mentioned in there.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like she would be good.
I think she would have been good too. I mean, I love Margaret Avery though. Margaret Avery was nominated.
She was so good.
And she was nominated for an Oscar for this.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad she was. I didn't notice that. I almost feel like, I mean, how she was pretty well known. Tina Turner was pretty well known back then.
Yeah.
I almost feel like having an unknown in that role
is better.
Worked.
Yeah.
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 I think we would have been distracted. I think we would have been distracted by her.
But remember, they turned it down. They turned it down, meaning like Spielberg and the filmmakers thought it would be a good idea.
Right.
So, I mean,
I disagree with Spielberg is what I'm saying. What does he know about filmmaking and casting?
Really quick, Spielberg, to his credit, he was so uncertain that he was the right choice for this. Quincy Jones talked him into it to direct it. He said, I am so uncertain that I'm going to do justice to this. He's like, I have no knowledge of the Black experience. I have no knowledge of down south, of the South. So he's like, I'm going to take the minimum fee. So which
is $7 million.
So Spielberg, at that point in time, was getting $15 million a movie.
Oh my! Are you serious? I thought I was being super exaggerating.
He was getting $15 million a movie, and he took $40,000.
Wow.
$40,000 to do this. So so the pressure would be off.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he made it a comedy.
Oh my God.
But that's, to be honest, I did feel the ending was rushed, weirdly enough. I felt that in a weird way, to me, I feel like they spent a little too much time with, like, the kids than the sisters. To me, this is about sisters.
Yes.
Not about her long-lost children, who she truly hadn't even spoken to. Never. Like, they were little itty-bitty babies ripped away from her.
And she doesn't even talk about them throughout the entire movie. It would be one thing if she was like,
I miss my kids.
I had 2 children. I miss them every day. Like, anything.
Anything from me.
Never
anything about my babies in that mail.
About my babies.
Yeah. Like, I mean, never mentioned. But the sisters consistently mentioned.
Yes.
I kind of just wish that was more of a moment, and I just feel like it was like, it's a long trek. Like, she walks out of the house and she's realizing, and she sees the fabric blowing in the wind and all that. But it's like I just kind of wanted more of a moment.
Now, tell me, you said earlier that he made that happen. How did he make that happen? I missed that.
He went into the immigration office. And
oh my God. No recollection of
Mr. Realized what was going on, and all this. And so to, I guess, make it right, he went into the immigration.
What a good guy, huh?
Well, because the kids, I guess because they were in Africa, and so he facilitated them coming back.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I missed that whole part. Because I even said, here we are at the end. You get the sense that they're leaving town. They're leaving this, like when she leaves with Shug, and then the other one left with her, which was weird. Like, why is she tagging along? Like, no, you have to stay.
Yeah, she was annoying. Gotta
she
be
was
honest.
Annoying.
I didn't like her.
Really annoying. I don't even know why she was there.
Yeah,
it's weird, but. But you get the sense that they're leaving town. She's leaving this life behind. Goodbye forever.
And they did. So remember, though, that so also the father wasn't the father.
Right.
So they find that out. So, but because of the will and all of that, like she and the other people had died, so Celie inherits the house and the shop, which sadly is not that far away from Mr.
Okay.
So, which I think is, how many options and stuff do they have? But right. I think what you get the sense of is that Celie is done with Mr.
Yes.
And so I was actually.
It was confusing.
It was a little confusing.
I think it's because it was so rushed. I think
the ending
I agree with you. It was very, like, all of a sudden, like, from the minute she stands up at the table to the actual ending, I mean, what was that, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
If that?
Yeah.
You couldn't have stretched that out a little bit and, like, got rid of some of the middle? I mean, I don't expect it to be longer. Don't get me wrong, but it was very rushed at the end.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, because then I was like, well, why is Sophia there? Like, I was so confused. All of a sudden, everyone's there. Like, why is everybody there? Like, I thought they were in a different state. Like, I was just, like, completely taken aback.
Yeah, but I'm glad they formed the sisterhood. And that they were all living together in that house. That's fun.
Yes, I think that's fantastic, too. I agree. It was really, really nice. But, and then the other, it actually explains more, because now, are we to believe that the sister couldn't come back until Mr. cleared things up? Okay, because that was the other thing. Like, why, now that she's in this, like, happy environment, why didn't she ever try to come back?
Right.
But she just couldn't.
She couldn't.
That makes sense. Okay, good.
Yeah, because I'm
glad we had this conversation.
Well, because I think the kid, I mean, I don't know how it was then, but I would imagine the kids probably had African, citizenship or something. Maybe even really no record of their even existence, perhaps. I don't know. I'm sure this is all explained much better much better in the book. But yeah.
So interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, I mean, all in all, a good movie. And the other thing, too, that was really interesting was my memory was a little bit off. I didn't remember him actually having, like, money. I felt like they were poor throughout the entire movie, but Mr. actually had money.
Mr. had money. Yeah.
So it was, like, really funny. Like, my memory of this was, like, very off.
Yeah.
It's like I only remembered the bad parts.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Same with me. Well, because
and maybe my mother was like, "Remember this," right?
Well, because it's jolting.
It is jolting,
and it's also, I mean, he'd say, but it's like a Steven Spielberg movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey. I mean, like, you're not expecting, and certainly not as a teenager, a PG-13.
Yes.
Yeah.
PG-13, and so here's my other thought: is Roots was way before that.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing my mother made me watch. So maybe I was expecting this to be more like Roots and more dealing with, like, slavery and that sort of thing. Maybe that I had sort of a connection between the two in that way because, I don't know, maybe that's more or less where my memories were.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we said in the very beginning of this episode, very few Black-led movies and programs like that. Yeah, I mean, the pickings are real slim, you know. Yeah. So more, less, about the same than your.
I liked it more.
Yeah, same.
I liked it more. I appreciated it.
Sorry, I mean more. I'm agreeing with you. More for me as well.
I appreciated it more. I think then it was more depressing, and this, at least it was a little lighter. It was a lot more heartwarming for me this time around than it was back then. Yeah, it was just sad and depressing back then.
And I agree. I think it's like the supporting characters, the strong female supporting characters are great. They're smart, they're funny, they're strong, like, and it really needed it. And I think and it made me appreciate the movie a lot more. And I think the acting is just so strong. Yes, the acting's fantastic. All across the board. And just the representation of women in general, I think, was so much stronger than I remember it being. Yep, same. All right, so do we have questions? Yes, we do. So do you want to go first? Sure. So I have a match game, like I said. Are you ready? Yes. So Shug has the gift of song, communicating her feelings, like sister to Celie. Mm-hmm. Well, her follow-up song was about Mr. called blank. Oh, no. There we go.
just gonna... Okay. I'm done.
Ding.
Ding.
All right. So Shug sang sister for Celie. Her follow-up was to Mr. called blank.
Dickhead.
I had asshole.
Oh my god! I almost put asshole,
Yeah,
but
I almost.
I felt like dickhead
I had
better.
loser. Honestly, Christine, what I almost thought you were gonna put was Mr. because it's sister.
Oh.
But yeah.
Yeah, I felt like dickhead is a little bit more. I don't know. Had a little more oomph to it. Okay, so you ready for mine?
Yes,
you're gonna
I am.
You're gonna laugh at this question because
All right.
of the conversation we had earlier.
Okay.
So, despite all of her abuse,
Oh.
Celie actually had quite a sense of humor.
Oh.
Yeah. In fact, on the days when Mr. was being a bigger asshole than usual,
Mm-hmm.
she put blank in his supper. I need to get like little pieces of paper to use for this match game because I'm using up all of my sheets of paper.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Ding.
Ding. All right.
So mine's a little dark.
Okay.
Mine's a little dark because
Okay.
it ties into the movie.
Okay, so Celie had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
When Mr. was being a bigger asshole than usual, she would put blank.
Rocks.
Rocks!
Because he threw rocks at Nettie to make her run away.
Oh,
Remember?
that's pretty good.
That was
That's pretty
awful.
good, yeah.
That whole scene.
The whole scene was terrible.
It went on forever.
It really
did. It was so sad.
Yeah, it really did.
What did you have?
I had, because he was being an asshole. What goes with asshole?
Oh, shit.
Shit. Ding, ding, ding. Not a
Two
match.
losers. Two losers today.
Two losers. I know. We got to get back on track there.
And that's the color purple.
And that's it for us in this episode of Old Roommates. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Old Roommates on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please give us a rating or review while you're there.
And if you're interested in more Old Roommates, including special episodes, bonus content, movie recommendations, and more, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/oldroommates. Comments and ideas can be emailed to us at oldroommatespod@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Old Roommates.
Thanks again for listening. This is Christina.
And this is Brian. Until next time.